Hello, everyone. This is EIPIP meeting 20, and I'm sharing agenda in the chat. So the first item that we would like to discuss today are some comments coming up from the EIP survey. We have Edson here. So Edson, take it away.
Yeah, so the first question is, how can we clarify what steps EIP authors need to take for their EIP to be included in clients? This is a question specifically for core EIPs. Can you hear me?
Yeah, before you jumped on, I had some responses to that, but if I'm the only one that feels that way, there's no use probably saying it more because I think everyone already knows my opinion.
Brent, I think you can go ahead and say that because that was like pre-discussion, so we were unfortunately not able to record that. So if you have anything further on these comments, please feel free to add it here.
Okay, yeah, and this is all just my opinion. So, but basically, how can we clarify what steps EIP authors need to take? We've had this discussion in the last, in multiple meetings where people, and also the PEEP and EIP, that discussion came up yet again. People are asking what, but in my opinion, if you can have a petition-like system where everyone can sign the petition, including people that are in charge of clients, and they say, yes, we are going to implement this, and everyone signs the petition, then that by definition is, yes, everyone, we've achieved consensus, so it by definition will move forward. And so eventually, if we learn how to do that kind of communication where everyone communicates to the one and we work on building as much consensus as possible, eventually we'll probably come up with measures where we can say, like, well, you have to have 75% of the quadratic ether, you have to have 75% of the core devs, you have to have 75% of the popular, or something like that. But even if we did come up with a measure like that, it would still should be the goal to have a petition-like system where everyone can sign on and everyone say, I'm on board with this, and have a room for a competing camp where people that aren't on board can join that camp, and also a hierarchical structure so that you can keep the focus on what people agree on in a super camp and push the disagreeable stuff to lower level subcamps. And again, if you can find out concisely and quantitatively what everyone wants, that is by definition consensus, and you can 99% of the time find a creative way to get everyone everything they want. And so that's just my opinion. So.
So as far as the present process, I believe at this point of time, the process is to bring it to all core devs' attention, and the clients are providing their opinion and asking questions, and that's the way an EIP author can actually request for including that to be in the clients for the core EIPs, as well as with this new process in place, the network upgrade process, there is at 1.0 repository there they can go ahead and create an issue, and with the help of hard fork coordinator, that can be brought into client's attention. Is there anything else that we can add, Micah, because you are the editor?
I would say get your EIP to at least into draft. I've seen plenty of people try to bring EIPs to the core devs without it even being in draft yet, and that's almost certainly not going to work well for you. The other thing I think you can do is, once we institute the review step, assuming that goes through, then getting it all the way to review, I think, would be most appropriate. The review stage will, if we go forward with that, indicate that the EIP is ready for general consumption and review. And ideally, it means there will be an editor will go through and make sure that everything is, structurally sound, well worded, stuff like that. And so you'll have, by the time it gets to review, hopefully you'll have someone, at least one other person, who has looked it over, who is familiar with the process and understands how things work, and has at least tried to work with you on getting it into a good state. I think the last thing is, I mentioned this in the PEEP and EIP discussion, keep your EIPs small EIPs that are very small and short. So change the least possible amount of things in an EIP as you can. And also try to keep the text to a minimum. While I know it's tempting to write, a long essay about why your EIP is great, editors core devs are very short on time, and having something that's quick for them to scan over and read is very valuable. And this is where the abstract comes in very handy, and the simple summary. Keeping the simple summary very simple, like one sentence, like a subject line of an email, really does help. And the abstract, have it be a human readable and very short version of the specification. So an editor who just wants to get a core dev who just wants to get an idea of, is this something that I support, can just read the abstract and be done with it in a minute or two. So if you want to get your IP merged, that would be my advice. None of this is a guarantee, of course, but I think that's your best bet.
Is there somewhere where we could put this information?
That's what I was thinking.
The internet.
Yeah, like should we write an article? Should we put it in the EIP specs repository, or where should we put it? Should we link it in EIP1?
I would say no to EIP1 because we're trying really hard to keep the EIP's repository out of the hard fork coordination process, and this is really a hard fork coordination question. The EIP specs definitely seems more appropriate to me, since that is the hard fork coordination repository.
Yeah, probably these can be added to the README section of at one spec, just to add more clarification on what steps author needs to take. I think there is some text already there, but we can add some more information that would be helpful for new authors to follow along.
Okay, the next question is, how can we make the EIP process more well known?
My vote is that we don't. I think too many people know about the EIP process as it is. I have way too much work.
So generally, there are very small group of people who are actually involved in writing an EIP. Those people are from the, who are already engaged in Ethereum development. And most of them are there in the all core dev meeting. So if we can get this thing out with the participants of the all core dev meeting, I think that is one place from where we can start and let people know about this process. But for that, since we are avoiding any kind of EIPs for stating the processes, we can definitely add it in README section.
To Micah's point, I think the reason we don't have that many editors is because that many people know about the process. Otherwise, there'd be more people asking to be editors as well.
That's fair. I worry that the rate of growth of people wanting to draft EIPs will outpace the rate of growth of editors, just because that's historically been the case. I don't know how to solve that. Don't take my comment too seriously. It's mostly meant glibly. I do want people to use the EIP process where appropriate. My main concern is that the EIP process is currently, in my opinion, misused by a lot of people. Like, I spend a lot of my day just explaining to people why this is not a good EIP, or why this thing that they want to do is not appropriate for the EIP's repository. And so whatever solution we come up with, it would be nice if we are making sure we're attracting the right crowd, like attracting people who actually should be writing EIPs or who we would benefit from writing EIPs, rather than just getting a bunch of people on the internet who want to express their opinion and they think the EIP's repository is the way to express their opinion to core devs.
It makes a lot of sense.
And again, I don't have an actual solution here. Just whatever mechanism we choose, just ideally have it hopefully target well, and not just Like I wouldn't want to put up like an AdWords campaign on Reddit, for example, on getting people to write EIPs. That feels like it would attract the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
So recently I have come across some queries around the process of the network upgrade, like because that has changed. Like we did some modification, separated the EIP process and the hard fork process. So we came across some queries, but I personally feel that EIP1 is the best place to, at least understand what the EIP process is, or if somebody is trying to write it down for the first time. That is the best reference available at this point.
EIP1 or the README?
EIP1.
Like as a frequent GitHub user, I always start with the README. Like when I go to a new GitHub repository, first thing I do is read the README and see what it says. Again, I don't know if everybody does that. That's just my process.
I do that too.
Personally, I haven't checked the README section for that EIP's repository, but I have checked that EIP1, and that I found like, yeah. So it has certain information regarding how the process should like EIP should be created or the process should look like. So I may have to check that again.
I mean, the README is not great. Don't get me. It's got like maybe 2 paragraphs about the process, and a lot of it's duplicate of EIP1. Maybe, I mean, this is getting a little off into the weeds, but there has been talk in the past, and I tentatively agree, that we should just have the README and just get rid of EIP1 and have the README be EIP1 if you want. It would be named README, but you can call it EIP1 or something, or I don't know if GitHub supports some links. Reason being is right now, like, the two kind of share a purpose, which is describing what this repository is. The README is the way that most people who use GitHub regularly get their information. And then EIP1 then duplicates that kind of same purpose, but in a different location. And so I think that's maybe part of the confusion, is that you have people coming to the repository, reading the README, which is what they're used to, and then that README does not give them the information that necessarily we want to give them. But at the same time, we also don't want to just duplicate EIP1 and have to update 2 places for everything.
I may have a different opinion here about EIP1 to be replaced by README, because I believe that eips.ethereum.org, the website where we have the collection of all EIPs. I'm not sure if I have seen that README section there, but if EIPs, I mean, the directions are mentioned in EIP1 would be there, and it would be an easy reference for people, So personally, I feel that it is good in EIPs itself, but again,
That's actually a good question. Does anyone know where the front page of eips.ethereum.org comes from? It's not EIP1, and it's not the README.
Yeah.
It's apparently a third place that duplicates the exact same set of information that I don't even know. I don't know where that comes from. We should figure that out. So yeah, we have 3 places that essentially are trying to do the same thing, which is describe what this repository is and what its purpose is. I feel like we should try to consolidate that.
Single source of truth. Yep.
I think there is one more place to it in addition to whatever 3, and that is ethereum.org/EIPs. So basically ethereum.org/EIPs is a new page that was created for EIPs, but that actually refers back to eips.ethereum.org. So it was some change, but yes, at this point we have 4 places.
So yeah, so it definitely feels, so now I'm better understanding why all 4 of these have gaps. So each one of these is not ideal. Like they're each missing something, or they each have a little problem that we've run into at one point or another. And I think the problem is just that there are 4 different places that all share a purpose. Do we all agree that they share a purpose? Like the goal of each of these documents is to try to explain the EIP process? Or do we think that these are different purposes?
Not for the ethereum.org/EIPs. That one just introduces what the EIP process is.
Yeah, that was just to make
And
it more popular, like people should know about EIPs. So it does not share the same purpose.
so what, can someone help me understand what the difference is between that and like EIP1 or the README or the front page of EIPs.ethereum.org? Aren't they
EIP1
also?
specifies what the process is, while the
I
ethereum.org
see.
is just introducing that there is a process.
I see. So Ethereum.org is saying, hey, EIPs are a thing. This is generally what they're for. And in theory, EIP1 says this is the process for EIPs. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, we should rip out the what is an EIP from the EIP1, since we have other places that are saying the same thing in more depth, and just have EIP1 be the process. That way we have more clear delineation. Like right now, EIP1 is trying to describe both the process and why the process exists and what EIPs are, and it's not doing a good job of those other things. And so I feel like we should just tear that out and just say, hey, go look at one of these other 3 places. So maybe the README then, perhaps it should mirror ethereum.org/EIPs. Does that make sense? Like, should the README of the EIPs repository just describe what an EIP is and why you might want it? Or should it be more like EIP1, where it describes the process?
Does the README link to EIP1? Because that might be part of the issue.
It does all. I believe all of these link to each other. So we have this kind of mesh of these 4 things that are all very similar in purpose. And so, yeah, like this first paragraph of the README says, please read EIP1. And then it goes on to kind of reiterate what EIP1 just said, which if you follow the instructions, you would have already read.
So I think that EIP1 it does not only say about the the purpose of it that is there in the README itself, but also explain about other things. What are the types? How you should create and how you should categorize, and the processes is included.
Yes, the EIP1 is the longest of them, certainly.
Mhm.
It sounds like we need to get the ethereum.org that sort of mirrors the README to find out where that comes from and why it comes from, and get those to coordinate so that we have a single source of truth for that information.
Yeah, I would be okay with that if we could just get those 2 pages to be mirrors, which leaves the last one, which is the front page of eips.ethereum.org. Should that also mirror just the what and the why of EIPs? Or should that be more process oriented?
Yeah, it sounds like we have mirrors of all those 3 things, or a description of what EIPs are, and the process is in the EIP1.
I'd be okay with that. That would definitely clear up a lot of things, I think. Like right now, when we're making changes, it's kind of random whether someone updates the README or EIP1 or the homepage of eips.ethereum.org or the ethereum.org/EIPs. If we had a more clear delineation of EIP1 is just a description of the process, that's it. These other 3 are all identical, like they're mirrors of each other, and they are describing, like at a high level, what are EIPs, why do you want EIPs, some history maybe, etc. Then we would have much more clear lines, and I think it'll be easier to do updates to these and get it in the right place.
I would agree. That makes a lot of sense. Like we have just one place for processes and rest others just to, let people know about it. Like there is a place where you can find the right process.
Nice.
Who wants to take up the task of figuring out where ethereum.org/EIPs comes from?
I wouldn't mind looking into that. I have no clue where to start, but I could spend some time on it.
I think that's in the ethereum.org repository. in.
Okay.
Yeah.
They do have a
Also-
GitHub link at the bottom of those links there, so that seems reasonable.
Also, Micah had some great descriptions of the process and what to go through, and those are contained in the notes. And it looks like, Pooja, you're on for notes for today's meeting. Is that true?
Yeah, I saw myself there, but I may not be doing that. Somebody else would be doing it. I'll let people know. But yes, it will be done.
Yeah, but I was wondering if whoever's going to do the notes, if I could work with that, because we've captured what Micah said on those steps, and we should work on capturing that and get that. We talked about what needs to be done, but no one's volunteered to do it. So anyway, I'd like to help with that if I could.
Sure.
I think the other challenge will be, I don't actually know how to mirror the same content across all three of these locations, because I believe all three of them are just different spots in various GitHub repositories. I don't know about what a good way to mirror is. I think in an ideal world where engineering was free, we would write a little bot that just made it so anytime one of them was updated, the bot would go and submit and accept and merge a PR into the other two, so they would always stay in sync. But that's non-trivial engineering work, and so I don't know if there's a better process.
There's always source page include, where you just blatantly suck another page into your page. So that shouldn't be too. But anyway, I could look into that. I'll take that task to look into that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So if you can figure out how to do that in Markdown specifically, like does Markdown support just like iframe or something?
Yeah. So the three places are EIP, the ethereum.org/EIP, and the other one is just ethereum.org.
So eips.ethereum.org, the front page there.
EIPs.ethereum.org, and then there's ethereum.org/EIP.
EIPs, yep, with an S.
And then the README for the EIP repository.
Yes. The other thing, there is one other thing that's in the README for the repository, which is how to build the EIP site. That's very common in READMEs for GitHub things. If we can keep that in the footer, like, so the top would be a mirror of everything, and then just the bottom, it just says, hey, this is how you build this repository. That would be nice. If that's not possible, we could probably move it to another file, and I don't think anyone's going to cry too much about that.
Now help me understand, because I thought the EIP repository was just a list of EIPs. Is there what gets done with the build of the EIP repository?
It gets turned into eips.ethereum.org.
Oh, that's what you mean by the build.
EIPs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It just generating that website from the Markdown files.
Got it. Okay.
Like, it'd be nice if that could also be in the README just at the bottom, because that's where people generally look for that type of information.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
If we can't, because the way we're mirroring or whatever makes it so we can't add stuff to the end, I think that's also acceptable. Like, we could put it in another file, like a development.md file or something.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Glad I can help. I hope so.
I could go with the next question. It says, how can the community track progress for EAPs and who has it implemented? This is again for core EAPs, I think, at least.
I believe that would be the hard fork coordination process, which would be the ETH specs repo. I don't actually follow that repository. I don't know. Do you follow that repository, Pooja, and understand how it works? Or is that a James question?
Yeah, that's more of a James question. I'm just helping him out in keeping it up to date. For example, the current process, what we have done is like we have created two files for YOLO V2 and V3. And if you get into that V2 and V3, you will get to know what state of development any client is. Say, for example, like earlier we were considering that Open Ethereum may not be able to join YOLO V3, but recently they have shared their consent that they would be joining version 3. So it is marked, like Open Ethereum would also be a part, like they have mentioned that they would be participating, but their progress is still to be captured. As they move along, the process is captured there, and every client's status is being updated in this eth1.o spec. So people can follow along with that repository to be up to date with where a proposal is with any particular client. I hope it answers the question, Edson.
Yeah, so is there a way we could let the community know that it's tracked in the EIP repository?
Yeah.
What is that? So I'll repeat my question. Is there a way we could let the community know that this is tracked in the EIP repository?
It's not in the, so if community wants to track the progress of any core EIP, like where is it going, the core EIP progress can be tracked with the help of eth1.o spec repository. There we have created folders based on the DevNet, developers network testnet that they are doing for at the moment. They are working on YOLO testnet, YOLO FNet. So based on every version of YOLO, the progress can be tracked. Whatever is the latest version of YOLO there uh, before any upgrade, and the list of EIPs are there. Those will get into the hard fork, and those EIPs can be particularly tracked with the help of like client tracker. That is already, a table is already there. So if you can look into that, you can get more information of those EIPs, and that's how we can follow the progress.
Let me repeat my question. Is there a way we can let the community know that they can track it within the ETH1 specs repo?
Do you mean is it being documented anywhere?
No, I mean, does the community know that that's where you go for that?
I think we have mentioned it in a couple of all core dev meetings. So yeah, that's.
I suspect that my intuition is that not everybody knows about ETH1 specs repo yet. That could be wrong. I don't have a good answer to how we can do better at that.
Yeah, on that, like this network upgrade process, this is actually a new process. And yeah, I agree that many people may not know completely about that. As I mentioned earlier in the call that I have received some, queries regarding how this process goes around. So there were two things, like I already have drafted an EIP, that was EIP 1929, about mentioning the process, how does it work, but that is still there, and we still have not decided whether we should be keeping that as an meta informational or any form of EIP, or we want to keep that information anywhere else. But if that is not going to be in the form of any EIP, I would be happy to draft a Medium blog on that and explain the entire process, how we are considering it like this with this new network upgrade process, if that helps.
I think I'm in the process of writing a blog on Medium for that. So what I'm doing for the EIP specs repo, I guess you could do the one for the network upgrade process.
I'm not sure both are one or the same, or like
I think, in my opinion, they'd be different because I talk about the network upgrade process only briefly. I don't
okay,
spend a lot of time on it.
got it. Yeah, so yeah, I can go ahead and do that. Like I'll sync up with you and see where we are. If that has to be separated, yes, we can go ahead and do that.
Okay, I'll post my drafts into the publication.
Sure.
Do we have time for the other ones? We have, I think, 6 minutes left. I can move on to the next question, or
So I think we can pick up at least one.
Okay. How can discussions about EAPs be more easily followed?
More easily than following the discussion link in the EIP.
I guess this is for EIPs where discussion happens outside of the discussion link. I think the solution would be just having all of the discussion happen within the discussion link though.
Yeah, or at least having, when a discussion happens outside the discussion link, kind of backport the conclusion of that discussion into the discussion link. So I've done this in EIPs before where I'll have an EIP drafted up, have a discussion to link, but then have a conversation over in Discord with somebody. And then I try to go back, if that Discord conversation generated some new change or some new content or some new conclusions, I'll go back to the discussion link and say, had a conversation in Discord, this is the outcome of it. So that way anyone who's following along only has to subscribe to the discussion to link, and then they can get kind of a feed of all the things that are happening, all the discussions going on, etc. So that'd be my recommendation for people.
Yeah, I guess we could recommend that.
So yeah, I think we should pick up the last one too, and then that would be covered for today.
For that, should we put that in the EAP one, or where would we recommend that?
That might be reasonable for EIP one. It's not really a. This is. Yeah, I'd say that I can get aboard with keeping that in EIP one. I'm generally hesitant to add things to EIP one because it's already so long that no one reads it, and it'd be nice if we can keep it short. But I do think that's valuable enough, and it's short enough that we could have like one sentence that just says, if you have discussions outside the discussion to link, please make sure to kind of backport the conclusions of those discussions so people who are following can follow along.
Okay, and the last question is, how can we keep attention away from the process towards the technical discussion?
I would love to know the answer to that one.
I think these questions are more from the network upgrade side. I really wish James could have been here to answer all these questions, but I mean, like if a proposal needs some attention, I mean, we have ways for that, but technical discussion can be, kept in the for some time, like for some proposals that can be there in the GitHub pull request where it is there. But that's my thought on it. But
I just noticed we have Greg here. Welcome, Greg.
Hello. Am I late or did we start early?
Your daylight savings time. You're an hour late.
Huh. Google lied to me.
They do that a lot these days.
Yeah, I think we're wrapping up now.
Damn.
so yeah, we were about to wrap up. But since Greg is here, Greg, if you would want to quickly share your thought on the issue that you wanted to bring it up about the proliferation of EIP statuses, and see if people can hang around for a few more minutes to discuss about it.
I think it just comes down to not seeing the point of a review status. Drafts are always under review. So I don't see that it adds very much.
So I guess like the first issue that was brought up is since the introduction of the last call status, a lot of people were waiting to review until it was last call, and last call is meant to only be 2 weeks. So it's a problem introduced from having the last call as a status that people would wait until to give their review until it's put into last call. The thing is, we would want somewhere point of maturity where the EIP is out of draft and into a point where the author is asking for external review, which would be helpful in the hard fork coordination process. Because at that point, we could have a prerequisite for an EIP to go into CFI by needing to be in review. And you can make that explicit.
Well, the core devs are free to pull drafts into the core dev process at any point. That's pretty independent. From the EIP process point of view, as with the BIP process it was modeled on, the main transition is just a final. And also for the IETF process, things just stay RFCs. So I just don't see that adding yet another status solves the problem. People who want to procrastinate will still procrastinate. And from what I've seen, important EIPs start getting discussed even before their drafts and get lots of discussion all the way through the process. So it's really just down to the author to push the discussion forward.
Out of curiosity, do you hold the same contention if this was a new field in the front matter that was like review last call and the status was only draft and final? Like, would you still hold the same opinion in that case?
I'd be happier with just an optional field that authors can use to track status in whatever ways appropriate. I've just used just adding a notes field that gets removed at the very end of the process so that I can inform people what the status of the document is, but not the official status, but just things like this is where it is, these things are still in flux, these things are not. So non-normative material, basically. At the least, I don't, as an editor, I don't want to have to touch the change to review status. If it has to be there, it's the author's call, and the bot just pulls them in.
So my main desire, whether it's through statuses or something else, is just that we have a mechanism for authors to signal that, hey, I think I'm done with this. I'm ready for other people to start looking at it. As an editor, I have way more work than I have time for, and so I need a way to filter out EIPs that are not actually ready. Like the author's not ready for me to start looking at it yet because they're still iterating. Which we've been trying to encourage. We've been trying to encourage people to get an EIP into draft quickly and then iterate on it. And I need a way for them to be able to tell me, hey, I'm done iterating, I think. I need someone else to look at this who's familiar with the EIP process and understands, what makes good EIP, and to help me improve it from here. And whether that's a status or whether it's a separate field, I care much less about. What I'm looking for personally is just some signaling mechanism that is standardized so that, tools, like for me, the tool is GitHub. So in the GitHub bot. So when the bot says, hey, you're trying to change the status, you can't without an editor, that's my signal to step in. The bot could, of course, look at any other field, and that would work just as well. As long as I'm getting some signal that the author is saying, I'm ready. That would solve my problem.
I lose track, but Doesn't GitHub have a labeling system? I know it does for issues, and AXIC went through at
Yep,
one
they do.
point and labeled it. So it makes sense to just use GitHub system rather than clutter our own.
Sorry. So labels work on PRs and issues, but you cannot label files, which is what we would need in this case.
Okay, that was my question. So that doesn't work. It's just, drafts vary, but they should be ready for people to look at as soon as they're a draft. And some people will want to immediately start looking at them and start helping an author say whose English isn't up to snuff just at that level. Other people's drafts will already be excellent in that respect and ready for substantial discussion. Typically, the purely editorial work happens on the PRs, and the substantial discussions happen on the magicians and other discussion two places. So I just don't see that adding a status really helps the issue of people not paying attention to things they care about. They will continue to not pay attention.
Yeah, so for me, I think I agree with Greg to a certain extent in that I don't think the statuses will help with getting people to review normative content. For me, it's purely just as an editor. Like I would like a signaling mechanism. I agree, though. I don't think that anyone else is actually watching the status besides me and perhaps some other editors. Like I think everybody else ignores it. In fact, I think people ignore it to the point where like we have things going into hard forks that are still, drafts that have had 0 edits done to them because, the author has had no one look at it or no one, review it. So I think the status is ignored by basically everybody right now, except for me and other editors.
Then why not more free form fields rather than trying to decide in advance what information we need? Just a place for keeping track of information that's currently relevant to a document, and just see what turns out to be useful.
For me, again, because I'm looking for automated signaling, and right now I ignore all PRs that are auto merged. So any PR that someone does to their own EIP gets auto merged by the bot, and I immediately archive. I don't even look. Like I do not read it because I do not have time to read every single change that everybody makes to their own stuff. And so I wait until the bot says, "Hey, I can't merge this," and then that's when I go and look. And so again, I am okay with any solution to my problem. It doesn't have to be the status,
right.
But that's currently how I do it.
But that's your choice as to where to engage. Other people engage sooner. I've been encouraging people to engage with the editing much sooner. You don't have to be an EIP editor to start reviewing PRs. If you're interested in a PR, start reviewing it. Be helpful.
That would be awesome. So far, we have not had much luck with that.
Well, there's enough people interested to keep these calls going. And I've said that the only real privilege editors have that other people don't is write permissions on the repository.
Yeah, I agree with that part.
And that also means authors can be scaring up reviewers. Don't just put it out there and hope somebody wanders by to look, but go looking for colleagues and say, hey, please take a look at this.
Yeah, the people that want the stuff done.
You know me, I'm a stickler for process, but I like the process to be simple enough that that's not hard to do. Just go back and look at BIP1. It's a very simple process. It served Bitcoin for longer. and read that around. And look at the IETF process, which is served for even longer. They're very simple.
Makes sense.
So,
But- But this is in my review of the PR, so discussion can continue there. I did notice that particular PR has no discussion to link. So there's actually no place to.
PRs don't, only EIPs do. Or do you mean the EIP 1 doesn't have a discussion to link?
I believe it does not.
That's probably true. Go check real quick. I don't
makes
think
it
EIP 1
harder.
has a discussion to.
It makes it harder to have these discussions.
That one, the discussion two was the recording on this call several months ago. So this is just PR just finally being made now for discussions done in March, February, April.
I wouldn't be against creating a magician's thread that's specifically EIP 1 discussion 2. Or potentially even a whole sub forum on the magicians, if that's more appropriate. And that's the discussion too.
Yeah, I'm afraid
Like
in March,
a
April,
topic.
I was desperately trying to find a place to shelter. My lease was running out just as the lockdowns were starting. Such fun. But I can live with it better to the extent that editors don't have to approve these if it's something the author can do for whatever reason. But it just doesn't seem to accomplish a whole lot. I try and get review going before there's a draft. Get an issue going and start a less formal discussion on the issue itself. Just because it's so much easier to edit an issue than to pull PRs.
So this would be something easier to auto merge because ideally, well, not ideally, I guess like typically only the author would know when an EAP was ready for external review because they've done all they can to iterate on it. At that point, I think it should be fine for the EAP bot to auto merge an author's request to move it to review.
Would it rather help to either just make the last call longer, given that people tend not to look at it until then, so provide more time, or make it more clearly iterative? It goes into last call. If it's not making it, it bounces back to draft and can keep going in that circle until the authors give up or it gets through.
What you just described is the current process. I think the problem is by the time someone moves to last call, in my experience, they are to a point where they're no longer willing to make changes. Like they're psychologically at a place where they're like, I am done with this and it's not getting changed. This is particularly for core EAPs not as big of a problem. It's a real big problem for ERCs, where someone's like, oh, I've already implemented this and there's 17 implementations out in the wild on production and we've been in production for 6 months and now I'm moving to last call. And so like I recognize this doesn't solve that problem, like of people waiting too long. The hope is that it's a little more clear to people that review is very early in the process, whereas last call is very late in the process. Right now, people think last call is very late. And so they wait until like they are done. This thing is out the door already. I'm just formalizing it. And the hope is, I think by having it labeled review, they'll instead think, oh, this is a stage that's early in the process. It means I'm done iterating. but if so, now is a good time to give feedback. I don't know if that will be successful in that. I don't know if people will actually pick that up or not. It's hard to say.
Well then, should review be a major milestone rather than an afterthought? The author's happy with it, the editors are happy with it so far as form. Yeah, a big announcement is actually made through all the channels, and you know, sort of leave no doubt that the community's been informed that this thing is under review.
I think that's kind of the hope, is that by having this review step in the middle, that's not at the very end and it's not at the very beginning. So draft is the very beginning, last call is basically the end. By having the step in the middle, it kind of gives a nice big milestone. Like you said, like a time that is appropriate to announce to the world. Now is the time to look. Now is the time for everybody to start caring. Before this, probably me and my friend, care, and me and my close colleagues who are working on this together. Whereas last call is, like I said, it's in production by the time it hits last call. And so it'd be nice if there was a milestone in the middle.
It should. Okay, so is this a formality the author sort of says okay, or do we make it a big enough deal and make sure it really gets pushed out to the world?
I'm more ambivalent on that. Whether it's, I guess the question is, whose job is it to announce an EIP if we decide there's a milestone in the middle? Whose job is it to announce that? Is it up to the author to go announce that everywhere, or is it up to, like, they mark it as review, an editor reviews it and makes sure it's actually as good, and then like Cat Herders announces it? Like, who's in charge of that process?
Well, nobody can tell the cat herders what to do, but it's the kind of thing they might volunteer for.
So in one of the previous meetings, we discussed about this EIP bot thing. I'm not sure we have started it yet, but that is something that we can consider with the help of James.
So I guess
You're referring to the Twitter bot?
Right.
Twitter bot.
If that will help the process.
I share Greg's opinion on Twitter in general, but I think the idea is some sort of automated system for letting various channels know that an EIP is worth looking at. Twitter being, one of the channels that perhaps you and I don't like, but it is popular.
It's good for making announcements.
Sure.
I guess I'm coming down to either review is an actual milestone that is a hurdle to get over and the world knows about, or else it doesn't really serve a huge point. The author's free to make blog posts and otherwise let the world know, hey, this is here, I really want opinions.
I like the milestone idea, personally. I'd be in favor of that.
But that's where the author needs help. Yeah, because that really is a problem for authors. If you're really good technically, you may still have no clue how to get the word out to other people that something's happening.
Do the cat herders think they might be interested in that part of it, like getting the word out about EIPs that have moved into review?
Yeah, I don't think we would mind, at least letting people know with the help of Twitter or even with the Medium update that we share. But if there is something specific in mind, like any particular format, would love to know that.
Or channel, and we've done some of that stuff already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also like the PEEP and EIP review stage would be a good time to do the Peep and Eep video. I think the Twitter, maybe if we had a place to announce in Discord, if that's where people are hanging out, for especially for core EIPs, maybe announce it in all core devs channel the first time once it hits review. So yeah, Peep and Eep, Twitter, all core devs. And maybe there are others channels people listen to. Is there a, I guess the Ethereum blog? I don't know if this is maybe too specific for the Ethereum blog. I think it's more general.
Yeah, we can take care of other communication channels like this EIP channel in the at R&D Discord. We can announce it over there. We can certainly make use of Ethereum Cat Herder's Twitter account to share about it. But yeah, not about the Ethereum blog part. And yes, Peep and Eep video about that when it gets into review is also a very good suggestion. We'll try to get in touch with the authors, especially for the core EIPs. We'll try to make an episode on that. I hope that is going to help. Yes. So one more topic that we were discussing before many of you joined is like there are a handful of proposals which are there. They have been reviewed by one of the editors, but not many editors' attention were there. So how and like what can be the process in which we can agree to move those proposals? And that is being reviewed by one editor, but if he has reservations of pushing it, like merging it directly, how do we handle this kind of situation? How do we want to keep it going and not just become a blocker because we did not get opinion from other editors? Now that we have 3 editors here on the channel, so if anybody has to share anything on that.
This is specifically for changes to EIP1, the README, EIP template, stuff like that. When those PRs are made, if one editor reviews it and all the other editors remain silent for, say, a month or weeks or whatever, should we take that for assent and it's okay to merge, or should we continue to try to wait until we get some sort of quorum of editors actually reading it?
Oh, wait, am I muted? Sorry, I thought I was hardware muted. I think for right now, like the current time period, we should take that as approval and it can get merged. However, the root problem is not having enough active editors. So if we can tackle that as a priority, and I apologize, I haven't been able to be on the last few calls, so that might have been heavily discussed, but that should make that problem less of a problem.
Yes, achieving quorum is much easier when you have people who show up.
Yeah, exactly. So solving that would be nice. And I'm starting to brainstorm and talk to people about funding options for editors to get more incentive, since there's not really an incentive to do this other than goodwill. And it takes time, so people should get monetary reimbursement for this.
Woohoo.
In the meantime, in the meantime, so if I understood you correctly, just I want to make sure I didn't misunderstand. In the meantime, until we get more editors, you think that it's reasonable to just, like, if we get one editor to review a change to like EIP1 or the template or the README and everybody else remains quiet for some amount of time, then we should just go ahead and merge it, and that's okay? And if so, what's your time frame ideal? Like a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months?
2 weeks is the ideal time frame, and that is my position, but I don't hold it very strongly. I'm open to other people's opinions on it, obviously.
I mean, the one caveat is everybody should be aware of is that Micah is going to become a benevolent dictator, or malevolent, hard to be seen yet, very soon if we move forward with this. There's
Yeah.
like a dozen EIPs out, or a dozen PRs out there that are changes to the process or changes to the template that I'm the only reviewer on, and as soon as I have the green light, I'll be merging them all. And so I just have been hesitant to give myself the green light without anyone else having a say.
I personally like the idea at this point in the EIP editor life cycle history, whatever, of having somewhat of a active benevolent dictator or a group of editors who are semi-active to active, who are making all the decisions. Because if you look back at the history, for a long time, like the overhaul that I made to EIP 1 back in 2017, I think I just did on my own and merged it on my own. So there's a precedent for this that I'm comfortable with right now, but it could quickly go bad if we don't have the right people.
Yeah, I'll just say Hudson did it a year and a half ago. I'm safe. Blame him.
Throw me under the bus. I'm cool.
That's my plan.
By the way, they just launched the deposit contract for ETH2, which is why I was having to run around doing a little bit of comms work for that. And there's like a blog up, and spread the word about the address so people don't use a fake scam address.
Wow.
I guarantee you, people will use a fake scam address.
Yeah.
Great. So for the time being, we consider that the EIPs that have been opened for over a month, I'm particularly targeting this EIP that was for EIP 1 number, PR number 2996, in which we are trying to address the recent status change that can be merged if there is no further discussion on that. Considering Greg, you are here, and the concerns that you have raised, can we consider that as resolved? Like, what is the consensus? Can we go ahead and merge that as to the EIP 1 as the new EIP statuses?
I think that's okay.
I think it was Greg was the dissenter, and I think we're waiting to see if he is okay with it. Sounded kind of like maybe. You there, Greg? Still?
Unmute.
Okay.
Okay. My dissent is mild enough. I'm happy to just continue discussion on the draft once merged.
Okay.
Yes, so the main difference that we were trying to create here with draft and review is like that we also announced in one of the all core dev meeting. As a proposal gets into the process of network upgrade, at least that should not be considered in draft, because now that is heavily under review. So it makes sense to change the status to review. And that would be like obvious for everyone that it is under review. Clients are considering, and that will give a clear signal that it has moved from the status of draft, and people can start looking into it. So that was the whole idea of it. So if it is not a hard dissent, I think it makes sense that we can continue with the process, the statuses that we have decided earlier with the help of this group, and go ahead and merge that. Yeah. If that's fine with you, Greg, too.
Yes.
Okay. Many of us who got here on time, besides me, because I've got the daylight savings time wrong, have been on for an hour and a half. Do we want to wrap it up?
You were not alone. There's like 2 of us here on time, and 6 that showed up late.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I didn't want like people to feel like they have to be here for 2 whole hours.
I can keep going if we have useful things to talk about. I don't know what other.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that was like the main item of discussion. And the number 2 questions brought up on the EIP survey, we already have discussed it, so people may find it in the recording. The next question, the item that we were hoping to discuss here is about the EIP triaging permission. Do we have any progress on that? Like, is it still something to be considered, and what is the update on that, if there is any?
Which item is that again?
Like client know. Like client may know if there's any change.
Yeah, that's about the triaging permission for EIPs. I think Hudson, Lightline, and
Oh,
James
take
were
that.
working
Oh,
together.
yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that actually is me. I misheard. Take that one off. We can't do triaging permissions because of what type of GitHub plan we're on. And I think we discussed that 3 meetings ago, and it just stayed on the agenda accidentally.
Sure, I'll take it off.
Thank you.
So while we have like good amount of editors on the call, there is another item which was sometimes discussed, but it has never appeared as a part of agenda item here, about the meta and information EIP. What is general opinion on that? Like, we have heard certain people's opinion, including mine too, but if there is anything new to be added, do we really think that we should have meta and information EIP be the part of EIP repository or not?
I believe we should have meta. That serves a bit better purpose than informational. I'm indifferent on keeping informational because I think it's not used very much, and I think it was Micah or Greg or both who kind of said that this is a specifications repository, and therefore having an informational EIP kind of throws a wrench into things as far as the purpose of the entire, repo.
It's a slippery slope because there's no clear line to draw. In my opinion, there's no clear line for this is acceptable for this repo and this is not, because I've seen people submit informational repos that are informational EIPs that are like, hey, I'm documenting my app in the EIP's repo and it's informational, so that's okay. And I don't have, as an editor, I do not have a strong argument other than I feel that is not appropriate for this. And I'd rather have better statements than I feel.
Yeah, we've had those for a while. We picked them up from BIP. And I think we can just tighten down the standards on those. They should still be technical documents, not necessarily specifications to build something, but technical documents offered for technical discussion. And it's not that slippery.
So a recent addition in the information category is EIP 2982. That is about the Serenity Phase 0, that is created by Danuran and Vitalik Buterin. It talks about what this Ethereum 2.0 Phase 0 is. So I personally feel that these kind of information is valuable, and for that purposes, we should certainly have the informational EIP in that repository. And yeah, of course, we can do screening of what to be approved and not approved, but that's general my thought on that.
Well, that's an example where substantively it's very controversial. But I think when we were done, the editors and the authors were satisfied that it was a technically useful document that wasn't making commitments to do anything or just going over the history of things, but saying this is a plan to improve Ethereum that we're working on, and it's a separate project, but here's what's relevant. And so it was a useful technical document that was informative to those working on the 1.0 chain. And I think we can start to draw those sorts of lines.
Right. Drawing lines would certainly help, but the purpose of informational document is to provide all kind of information that is valuable in Ethereum ecosystem. So that is still a question. Do we want to go about it? And about that Meta EIP, historically we have been using Meta EIP for having all the proposals which undergoes any network upgrade. Now we have Berlin coming up. Do we want to maintain that Meta EIP for Berlin?
I believe we've all agreed in the past to move it to the ETH 1.0 specs repo for hard fork coordination.
So
Right. So in that case, do we see any more use of Meta EIP there? Like, do we still want to have it? Although it explains the process, and that was one example that I came across explaining of the process, and the other one is to keep the list of EIPs. And if we are containing the list of EIPs in at 1.0 spec repository, do we still see the need of having Meta in EIP repository?
well, isn't EIP1 meta?
That is yes.
What else would it be
Yeah,
if it wasn't meta? That's kind of that's my number one reason for keeping meta is for EIP1.
So there were certain
I
more.
think the question is
Yeah, please go
is
ahead.
there anything else that would go into Meta besides EIP1? Or is it Meta literally just EIP1?
It's literally just EIP1 for now, and if there's anything in the future that requires it, like if we were to like eventually split out ERCs and EIPs, for instance, there might need to be a meta talking about that. Otherwise, no.
So we have this discussion like in this call today about the EIP1. So EIP1 is like considered to be the process, explaining the process of EIP, and it's a documentation for explanation of the process for EIP standardization. Similarly, we have a process for different other things. I mean, like, again, I do not want to get into that network upgrade and this thing, but yes, we decided that network upgrade process should not be documented in Meta, but it should be in the README file. So there was this another discussion of EIP1 before some of you joined today about having README and EIP1 in the same page. Like, do we need to have these two separately, or should we have it one?
Before we move on, real quick, is there? I wonder if it would help with the and I don't want to go too deep on this rabbit hole, so just know I don't actually have a strong opinion here. I wonder if there's value in renaming the meta status to special, just to indicate that this is not a status that anyone should probably ever, go create an EIP with this status. This is for very special and specific things that only the editors really understand, so don't try. Just kind of making it more clear that the meta EIPs are not a thing for end users to be using. So stop creating meta EIPs.
I'd be fine with that.
Sounds good.
Okay, we can continue. Sorry about that sidetrack.
No, that's all right. That's really helpful. So I think we should, when we are having that blog, I know Edson has dropped, but we would like to let these points to be included in that blog so that this information should be publicly available for people to refer, and then the confusion around this will be solved. Like, should it be meta? Should it be informational and others? That's my hope.
I'm fine with blogging about anything anyone wants. In fact, I tell a lot of EIP authors, you should go blog about this instead of writing an EIP.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I think most of the items that were added for discussion today we have covered, and we went a little over time. Sorry about the confusion created with this daylight saving. This meeting, EIP generally takes place at 1500 UTC, and we would like to keep it that way. If we do not come across many people saying that we would want to change it, but if not, then the time is 1500 UTC. So if anybody has anything else to discuss, we can take 5 more minutes. Otherwise, we can wrap it.
I would like to take a sec just to review the decisions made. It sounds like one decision made is we will have a review state, and the other decision made was we were going to convert meta to be special, and we're going to have that, and EIP1 is the only one that has a special state. Have those decisions been made?
That's what I got from this conversation.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Oh, and Micah is dictator for life. That was the third decision.
Oh yeah. I got to get that.
More specifically, we're saying that if there is a change to the process that is proposed via a PR to the EIP's repo, the editors will be tagged on it, and then after 2 weeks, if none of them have responded, or if the only ones that have responded positively, then we'll go ahead and merge that.
Oh, great.
Align
Thanks,
with what
thanks for
everybody got.
summarizing that in the notes. So that'll make it easier for the note taker.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So thank you everyone for joining today. The next meeting is on November 18 at 1500 UTC. See you all in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Really quick, before you stop the recording, since we have Hudson and Greg here, speaking of Micah is a dictator, there are a few EIPs that I personally am not merging because I disagree with them, but I believe that I'm alone in not merging them, and so we need some other editor to step in and merge them. Like I should not have the power to block.
Yeah, can you send me a link to those? Because I'm just like my GitHub notifications are a little out of control, so
Okay.
I'm having trouble keeping up.
Where's a good place to get a hold of you?
Discord or Telegram, either one is equally fine.
Okay. Yeah, I can send them over to you. I'll have to dig them up. Pooja, you might actually know what they are because I think some of them are yours.
Yeah.
Like basically any informational and meta EIP, I've been personally blocking, not blocking, just refusing to merge. My hope was that some other editor would step in and merge because they think those are okay. And I don't necessarily want my personal opinions to be, dictator-like, but they're ending up that way just because of, I'm taking a personal stance by not merging, but, if someone else merges, I'm not going to fight it. And that's turning into I'm blocking things, and it doesn't make me feel good.
Okay, sounds good. I can help.
Okay, I'll try to find them and send you links tomorrow.
All right, thanks for running this, Pooja.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Bye.